Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You should be here for the information session for BCS780. There is a distribution list. Please make sure that you sign next to your name. If your name is not on the list, please also make sure that you write it at the bottom of the list. All right. Good. My name is Johan Hubert. I'm with the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering, and I'm going to try and answer as many of your questions with regards to BCS. Now, the entire honors curriculum have actually changed quite a bit since last year. And I think most notably two things. The first one being this module. According to legislation, there must be for every degree that the university offers from fourth year upwards a research component. And that will kind of be implemented through this BCS module. So it's 32 credits. And remember that 32 credits, whoops, not Afrikaans, credits, roughly equates 320 hours worth of effort that you actually need to put in. So that's kind of the recipe that we actually use to determine how much work there should be into a module. So for this module, you will have a supervisor, but there's no coursework, there's no content. And your supervisor will dictate the reading material that you actually need to go through in order to kind of familiarize yourself with the content, with the methodology that they actually want. So your supervisor will pretty much dictate the outcome. Each supervisor will also specify what this examination will actually look like for this module. So there'll typically be one deliverable for your semester mark and then one final deliverable for your exam. And it will typically be in the form of an article. And with an article, I actually mean an essay that varies anything between 6 and 20 pages. That is kind of dictated by the supervisor as well. If you do a project under me, the less, the better. So I will not tolerate any submissions over about 6 to 10 pages. And you might say, yeah, that seems like easy work. On the contrary, there's a heck of a lot of work that you need to package so well because you only have 6 to 10 pages to package it in. All right. I'm not going to go into the details of, all right, so what will this module be about? Because there are core elements, there are core focus areas in our department. All right, and if you want more details in terms of what those core focus areas are, you should by now at least have had a look at what the department's website and specifically the postgraduate guide actually indicates. So if you go to the department's website, which is ie.up.ac.za, and you navigate, just write that down, ie.up.ac.za, you'll get to the Department of Industrial Engineering's website. On the left-hand side, there's a menu that you can go to the academic program, and then you just click on postgraduate, and you will find yourself on the page that deals with everything postgraduate, from the honors to the masters and the PhDs as well. All right, one of the first links that you can actually click on is the postgraduate guide. There's a big logo on there that actually says, this is the postgraduate guide for 2017. And it's important that you actually read through that document. The majority of you probably already have read through that document. That's why you know you should be here this afternoon. All right, so there are three kind of focus areas in the department. The first one is business process optimization. Then there's resource optimization and supply chain engineering. So those are very broad categories that you will be introduced to. Now, under each one of those headings, there are a couple of core modules. And this is kind of the important next step. BCS, the module that you're here for in terms of the information session, is a compulsory module if you want to do your honors degree, all right? We're bound by legislation to make sure that you do research. If you don't want to do research, you should rather opt for a BTech or an MTech, because there the emphasis on research is much less. But at a university, this is our kind of our core business, is firstly to do a quality research. All right, so when we look at the core modules, not all of the modules are presented every year. But because BCS is going to be kind of a bit of a free form when it comes to the content. You need to first know, all right, so what area and what discipline within industrial engineering do I actually want to focus on? If you just want to pass BCS, all right, good luck. But you still have to make a choice in terms of which of the focus areas you actually need to or want to focus in. Because the core modules, and I'm just going, you can go through the module descriptions in more details. There are a couple of core modules. The first one is enterprise architecture, or sorry, now it's called enterprise engineering and research methods. There is BCS780. Then there is supply chain processes, BCS781. These three core modules are presented right now in the first semester. That one is 32 credits, BOZ is 32 credits, and BLK is 16 credits. In the second semester, there is manufacturing, planning and control. Sorry. Which is also now 32 credits. There's solution algorithms in operations research. That is 32 credits. There is design and analysis of experiments. This one will not be presented this year in the second semester. And then there is supply chain design, BVK 780, and that is 16 credits as well. So those are the 7 core modules within industrial and systems engineering. There's one more which is not presented this year at all. We're alternating between BOZ, which is operations research, and BUY 780, which is also 32 credits, and that is simulation modeling. So we're alternating them, 1 year operations research, 1 year simulation modeling. All right, so those are the 8 core modules. And if you're interested, for example, in operations research, you can make an entire honors out of your operations research. You could, for example, pick BOZ the first semester this year. You can do the algorithms, BAR 780 in the second semester. And then next year, you can actually do BUY 780 and your BCS, and you've got a complete honors degree that is filled up out of only operations research. Or if you want to kind of a bit more of a mixed bag, you can actually select enterprise engineering, operations research, logistics, and you can kind of mix and match them, provided that you actually add up to 128 credits at least for your honors degree. All right, but what is important is before you can enroll and register for BCS, or actually start with the BCS project, you need to finish at least one of these core modules. Because otherwise, what will your BCS actually be based on? How will you make an informed decision about who should be your supervisor? So if you already know, all right, I only want to focus on operations research, and I simply use that as an example because that's my field and I know the modules better, and you do BOZ 780, then it is kind of, I mean, if that's the reason why you did an honors degree, it might be useful to finish that module, see what advanced content looks like at that level, at honors level, and then do your BCS based on one of those projects. Right, so it's important. That is why this semester you cannot enroll for BCS, or you cannot complete BCS, although the majority of you are probably already enrolled or registered for it. Right, but you can't be allocated a topic, you can't be allocated a supervisor, so you can't actually work on a project unless you've discussed it with a supervisor. Right, so important, you first have to finish at least one of these core modules before you can actually build BCS on top of that. All right, any questions with regards to the idea of core modules? None. All right, so how will we go about doing this? This is a fair amount of work, both from your side. It's 320 hours worth of effort that you need to put in. It's a heck of a lot of work from our side to actually supervise a bunch of students. And remember, 320 hours is not for you to get a distinction. That's the bare minimum to pass. So if you want to aim for a distinction, you need to pull up your socks, because to get from 65 to 70 is a lot of work. But to get from 70 to 75 is even more work, way more work. And the next 5% additional is even more work. Right, so just have an expectation that the amount of independent work that we expect at an honors level, especially for this module, is significant. There's a reason why it is an advanced postgraduate degree. All right. So therefore, I think it really is important that you pick a topic that makes you tick. That is something that you really enjoy, something that you can actually focus on. And I, at this point, want to encourage you to really pick your modules, your core modules, very well. Because in all of these modules that are now, from this year onwards, that's kind of the second big change that we're implementing this year, is that many of these modules have doubled in terms of their weight. All of our honors modules used to be 16 credits. Some of them, about half of them, are now 32 credits. And what that means is we go into a lot more depth in those modules. The scope becomes slightly bigger, but we go into a huge amount more depth. So if you plan well, and you pick your core module, and you lay a good foundation, you already are exposed to some independent and some research work in each one of those modules. That was the key drive behind doubling the credits, is not to just double the content and the lecture hours, but actually to teach you also what is involved when you actually want to do advanced work, when you want to do research in these particular modules. What is a good research methodology? What are good projects? How do you scope a project? Because very often projects are scoped not too small, but way too big. So there you'll learn how do you actually bring in your scope so that you can get the necessary depth and not kind of fizzle out in this very wide project that actually doesn't achieve much. So if you plan well and you lay a good foundation, you already are exposed to the research methodology in that module. If you then apply and are allocated a BCS topic on that particular module, or in that area, then you pretty much pave the way for you to finish your master's easily within a year. Within the first year of your master's degree, what then happens is you know the research methodology, you're exposed to actually doing research in that field. If you pick your project well, you can actually build on that topic towards your master's degree. And that is the idea. So you can either see this BCS as a big burden, now I have to do this independent research project, or you can actually say, wow, this is the key for me to unlock my master's and actually build momentum. So that when I do want to do a master's, I don't start from scratch. I start from a lot of momentum already. And that's the idea why we bring in more depth in the course, in the core modules, but also introduce BCS in terms of research. All right. But it's a lot of work. And for that reason, if we have Joe here, and we have Sue there, and we have Dee over here, and we have Pete over there, in terms of supervisors, each one of them will make a limited number of projects available, because we also need to balance the resources on our side as well. All right, so let's say I'm Joe, I will publish, let's say 5 topics. And I will say there's a deadline. If you're interested in one of these projects, let me know by a certain date. Give me your student number, and I will then, within a week after that deadline, actually say, right, from the 10 people that wanted to do these 5 projects, these are the 5 students that are assigned to that topic. All right. So you're going to probably, to some extent, compete, especially for the more interesting projects. As an exception, what some of the supervisors will actually allow is that you bring your own topics, provided that it's in that core field. Actually bring your own topic to the table as well and discuss it with them. But you need to go and discuss it up front with that particular supervisor. The benefit then is you don't compete with anybody else, it's your topic. For example, let's say you want to do an enterprise architecture or a business engineering project within your company, and you've already completed BBA, you know what you want to do. Dr. Marnay de Vries already laid the foundation in terms of research methodology. You go into your company, you say, wow, here's an exciting opportunity for me to apply enterprise engineering in my company. You can scope that with her input and nobody else can actually compete for that project, right? So that would be possible. In the majority of cases within the operations research group, we don't do that. Maybe as an exception, but in kind of the mainstream of things, we typically don't do that because we already have a number of active research streams going on that actually have an enormous amount of projects that we need to complete in our group. So what we rather do is we scope projects and they're already published. So if you go onto the website, and this is updated every half an hour. It gets, so if anybody changes within our group, changes some of the inputs, then you would be able to see it online. So if you go to academic programs again, and instead of postgraduate, you actually go to master's and doctoral research topics. The first link in terms of current research topics in the department is called Data Science and Optimization Group. If you click on that link, it opens up a PDF, and there's about 25, 30 odd projects that we are currently working on. All right, so those topics is literally updated as somebody adds them. Half an hour later, it will be compiled, and the PDF online would be updated. So, and every project is a short description in terms of what the project is about, who the contact person is, some additional reading if you have to go and read up about it, and then also whether the project is available at undergraduate level for a final year project, for BCS, for a master's project, or for a PhD. So we post all our projects that are available up there. Right. The other lecturers, the other supervisors will most likely towards the end of the semester, when the study guide is going to be released on ClickUp, will actually publish their 5 to 10 projects on there as well. All right. And then you're limited to actually make sure that you deliver on that particular project. Because very often it is well scoped. You don't have to worry about the scope, so it's easy to kind of get into the thick of things, but you need to do the independent understanding what goes on behind it. You need to get an understanding of what the current body of knowledge actually says about that particular problem. You need to solve it and actually present your results. How will you know what methodology to follow? It depends on the core module. So projects that deal with optimization, for example, will typically fall under BOZ. So you cannot be given a supply chain project if the core module that you've actually taken is operations research or mathematical programming. Just doesn't make sense. So that's why it's important that you actually pick a core module and then apply for projects in that particular field. All right. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Will this module be purely research-based, or will there be a project component in terms of going to a company and solving a specific problem, something similar to your 5-year project, or will it be purely research from a specific topic?
Right, the question is, will the project be research-based only? And I assume with that you assume paper kind of desktop research, or is it kind of applied in some way? That will depend on the project topic itself. In the majority of optimization projects that we kind of deal with, they are based on real, actual kind of what we call research projects, but it might be designing the buffer system on the new X3 BMW line, or it might be the warehouse picking algorithms that we're designing for Pick and Pay. So they are based on real projects, but your focus will typically not be to go and collect data, but actually just do the research component, focusing on whatever that core module is. Right. So in that sense, it's probably narrower than what the final year project often is, because what we typically do in the final year is we do not assign projects to students. Every student needs to go and identify their own project, and then your scope is very wide. Anything that you've done undergraduate within your industrial engineering curriculum, whether it's engineering economics or labor relations or whatever it is, or a spread of it, you just need to make sure that you apply some of it and not all of it, because otherwise it becomes way too big. So there, but the learning experience there is for students to go out, box a specific problem in kind of small enough so that they can actually solve it. That's the essence that we're trying to teach with the final year project. Here it is more on the research process, because that's the expectation from government side. is that it must be independent research. So there's a much stronger focus on the science component. But when we talk about science, there are 3 levels of science that you need to understand. There is the science of content. Right? That will be, for example, in operations research, that will be on how do you formulate a stochastic programming using a recourse approach or chance-constrained programming. It's about the content. It's about a very specific tool and technique inside a module. But in BCS, we're very much interested in the science of your method as well. And that is why in each one of these modules, we introduce research methodology. We will say, here are 2 or 3. Here's a designed research methodology that is typically applied to operations research. Here is an action research methodology. Here's an action design research. So the science behind the method, it's not just haphazard, let me do this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that. There's a process that you need to investigate from a scientific point of view as well. And then there is the science, what we typically like to call the science of packaging. To just dump data and words and graphs into a document does not make it a good essay or a good article. What you need to do is understand, but how do I structure a storyline so that I can actually answer a very particular question well? How do I package my work? How do I make sure that that classic phrase that we use, a picture says 1,000 words? How do I draw a graph so that people really think, wow, this tells me something? It's not just plonk in the document because I had to have a bar chart or something in my graph, in my document. How do I build graphics? How do I build a storyline? How do I build an argument that I can actually convince somebody? But there's science behind it. Some people are better. So there's an art part to good writing as well. But there's science behind it as well. In terms of how do you tell good stories? And the process of BCS is that you look into those 3 distinct areas and actually learn how to help yourself in future. But because from your honors onwards, you're on your own. And that's what makes a master's degree so amazing. You really become a master. There are no more exams. There's one oral exam right in the end. There's no more tests, right? It's actually amazing. You get to immerse yourself in a topic, because when you walk away from that, you are really a master of a specific field. So your honors, in my view, should just be a stepping stone to get to your master's degree. And that's why I think picking your core modules and picking your BCS topic is important. Right. Any other questions? Yes?
Since we all only been in this in the second semester, when will the process of selecting supervisors and topics start?
Most likely when you start finishing and get your marks for the first core modules.
So if I've done that last year?
If you've already done some of those modules, none of these 32 credit modules have ever been presented.
So the BBA then, if I've done that last year and it was a 60-credit module then, what happens with that?
You can probably, talk to Dr. Marnay de Vries. I can't kind of tell you what additional 16 credits actually was introduced that will be important to actually make it a core module. But you might actually say, that's fine. If you've got BBA, I can give you 2 or 3 additional reading pieces, at least you can start considering it. Absolutely, yeah. But then you need to go and contact that particular lecturer. I think we're the only group currently that on a continuous basis publish our topics, and I would think that the majority of the other supervisors will only publish it towards the end of the semester.
So the starting point would be to contact the supervisors of the core modules that you've already
Yes.
and speak to them in terms of topics and
Yeah, that would be my recommendation. Yes.
With the topics, how many can group a topic?
1. Typically only 1 person. It's 1 person per topic. If there's a problem that actually lends itself to be, let's say, attacked from 3 different directions, that supervisor will probably scope it in such a way that they are distinct from one another, but still contribute and build on the same material, but address the problem from 3 different perspectives.
So can I just clarify something? So are you saying the one with 16 credits, they're excluded from being the core modules?
16 credit modules. The question is, the ones that are 16 credit, are they no longer, or are they not core modules? These are all the core modules. Some of them just happen to be 16 credits, and some of them happen to be 32 credits from this year onwards. So if you did a BOZ when it was still 16 credits, I recommend that if you already want to start with that project, that you would contact the supervisor for that module and actually say, all right, I've done BOZ, I want to do this project. But for example, in BOZ, there's an entire new topic called dynamic programming that is introduced that wasn't introduced. So there's no way that I will allow a student to do dynamic programming if they finished only optimization in a previous 16 credit module. And that's why I say it will depend from module to module. But I mean, for example, BDE, which is not, sorry, that's a bad example because that's not presented. BLK and VK, the content will most likely stay exactly the same. So if for those core modules, you might contact the lecturer.
Say, for example, there's 5 topics and you've got, like you said, 10 applicants for those topics. What happens to the other 5 that didn't get the topics?
They would have to go and apply for other projects.
But say the module that they covered is then another one. What happens?
If they really want to do that particular topic, they've got one of two options. They can either go and find their own project and make sure that it complies with whatever that supervisor is willing to supervise, or they have to apply the next year when that module is presented.
Then how would you decide who gets the topic?
I cannot vouch for any of the other supervisors in terms of how they will actually pick students once they actually applied. In my specific case, it was strongly based in terms of your past performance in the modules and specifically in your performance in the core module itself. And that's why you will only be, you'll have to take a lecturer's module if you want to actually do a project under that supervisor. Because in my case specifically, I'm interested in terms of what the level of contribution and the level of interaction of that particular candidate was in my module that I presented as a core module. And the reason for that is because a lot of these projects that we scope in BOZ, BUY, and BAR are projects that are part of real research streams that's ongoing. So we're working with real customers, and I cannot afford students that just want to pass the module. Right? I'm not going to allocate topics to them because I've got a vested interest to make sure that this is a really successful project. Yes?
In terms of the project that you do for BCS and then later on doing a master's in the same topic, the work that you've done in BCS, can you use that in your master's, or is it, so I've heard that you almost can't use the same work twice kind of idea, so I'm just uncertain about that.
All right, so the question is, let's say you do a project, and I think there's a part of it that depends on the supervisor as well. If you do, let's say, BUY, simulation modeling, and you've done topic A, and I know up front that you actually want to do something related to topic A for your master's degree, I would think you are not committing industrial engineering unless you actually include that as part of your master's. I would expect you to include that as part of your master's and build on top of it. And I think there might be, well, I do know there are people that are kind of uncomfortable with it in terms of, are you just rehashing some of the same work and just redoing it? I don't think that's the idea. But I think it also depends on the person who actually scopes those projects. I will not allow somebody else to supervise a project that I know is based on a topic that I already supervised at honors level. Then I will make sure that I'm involved in that project because likely I can help that student scope that work to such an extent that I mean, that's why you do an honors, is so that you can build towards your master's degree. You will acknowledge the work that is part of my honors, but nothing prohibits you of actually building on that momentum. That's the idea. At least for me, that would be the idea, is that you actually build momentum. So if that is the total surface of a master's degree, you might, I mean, if you package it properly, the scope might stay exactly the same. Especially when you get to master's and PhD level, I had a chapter in my doctorate that was actually my master's degree, but I cited it as my master's degree and actually just built on top of that. So I think it's good industrial engineering to reuse work in the sense that you actually build on top of it and add more value to what was originally created. Do you agree?
Yes, I think you should just look at the number of like the credits and the number of hours. So obviously you can't take the BCS project and hand that in as your master's. You'll have to take the BCS project and do another however many credits, hours of work to actually do a master's. So BCS is only going to be a very small portion of your master's. Yeah, or like one chapter.
Yeah. So absolutely, the master's is a lot more work because your master's is 258 or something, 252 credits compared to 128 credits for your honors degree. So it's a huge amount more, it's double the amount of effort as your entire honors. So much more reason that you actually need to kind of build some traction at, or the earlier the better.